Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the MyFootballWriter YouTube channel. And who would have ever have thought this? Two videos in 3 days for players who, well, now with Ante Cernac is an official Norwich City player, and another one who looks as if he could be coming through the door very soon. It's just subject to a medical and international clearance. It's 18-year-old Danish midfielder Oscar Schwartau, who's going to be joining from the very same team Norwich signed Teemu Pukki from. So let's hope it goes just as well as that, but we'll wait and see. As this video will be with any ones you've seen of ours since we rebranded the channel back a few months ago. This is going to be a bit more information about the player, a bit more about the deal, more about their statistics in terms of goals and assists, because you always want to know that, and my personal thoughts on the signing. So anyway, first things first, as already mentioned about Schwartau, he's 18 years old, he's a Danish youth international and plays in midfield. We'll get on to more specifics about that in a second, but has played 11 games for the Danish youth international sides from under 15 to under 19 level, scored 4 goals, which is impressive for a midfielder, has to be said. Clearly, as I said with Cernac, highly rated by the Danish FA and their youth coaches and their youth system. So a player who clearly there's a good pathway for him into the main national team, and looks as if with the way he's going, he could well become a Denmark international in a few years' time. Of course, it will also be down to club form. He's got to perform well in order to play for his country. He's not just going to get picked because he's done well with the youth teams. But we could have a tidy little player on our hands here, a player who has already got bags of international experience, albeit at youth level, so maybe it's a bit easier for him, and he's not coming up against, you would argue, very tough opposition in terms of who Denmark's youth sides are playing in the youth international qualifiers and youth Euro qualifiers. But already a player very highly rated, a lot of promise, it seems, around Schwartau, and that's brilliant to hear. Of course, you want that around an 18-year-old who who maybe could become a wonder kid for all we know, if in his time at Norwich City, if he is to properly join. We'll have to wait and see on that. Would become Norwich City's 6th summer signing of the window. So Ben Napper and Johannesov tore up, willing to reinvest any money they get from sales, and they'll put it in. It was said after Gabriel Sara left, Torup felt as if he needed 2 players to replace Sarah. He got the first one in a Mankwa Forsen. Has he now arguably got his second one if Schwartau comes through the door? We'll wait and see. The deal's not over the line just yet, but it could be very soon. Do I expect Schwartau to probably be signed and registered and announced before Saturday when we play Sheffield United? No. Could he play against Crystal Palace in the Carabao Cup if he joins over the next few days? Probably, or he could be on the bench. Maybe this is a signing that goes more into academy level. We'll have to wait and see. But next up, as I mentioned, Norwich have already signed 5 players this summer. They've all been left-footed. However, Schwartau isn't. He could become the first summer signing for Norwich who's a right-footer. And as I already mentioned, plays in midfield. He's mainly an attacking midfielder, so he plays in that number 10 role, just behind the striker, where Norwich played a lot of games with Ashley Barnes there last season. So you would argue a player who's a bit more natural in the position, albeit he is 18 years old and he's not even played 50 games of first team football for his current club out in Denmark. Again, we'll get onto that in a second. You can probably already guess who it is by the Teemu Pukki clue. But again, a position where Norwich needed a player. They only really have, as already mentioned, Ashley Barnes and Marcelino Nunez, who could probably play as an attacking midfielder. And Ashley Barnes is in his mid-30s and is probably not going to have as big an impact as he would have had, say, if Norwich signed him a few years ago. You could argue and use cliches that his legs have gone and everything. Well, he's currently out injured, so Norwich don't really have a natural attacking midfielder in their team right now. And Schwartau can also play as a natural central midfielder, a bit more box to box. Could really just be a deep line playmaker like we've seen with Kenny McLean. But if Torup is to use him in the first team a lot, if he is to join, we'll wait and see as to where he feels his best position is, and we'll see how we can integrate him into his system. Norwich usually play with a 3-2-5 when they're in possession, and one of the central midfielders pretty much becomes the second striker. So it could be that if Schwartau starts, he could be playing that role, or maybe he'll just drop a little bit, just a tiny bit deeper, just be a few yards further back than the striker to try and create those spaces and work passes through to provide assists. But on to the next point. His team is Brondby. As I already mentioned, the team Norwich signed Teemu Pukki off. So Schwartau. You've got big boots to follow after the success of Teemu Pukki, so no pressure. But he probably didn't even know who Teemu Pukki was when he was coming through in the Brondby Youth Academy ranks, because he was only 13 years old when Pukki joined Norwich. But he's been at Brondby, at least in the first team, really, since he was 15. That's absurd. I mean, I was almost 4 years old when Schwartau was born, and I'm sat here making a video about him potentially joining the team I've grown up watching and support. It's a very mad world, isn't it? But been in their setup since 15, made his first team debut at 16. So again, that just goes off of how he's already in the Danish sorry, their youth international setup, and playing a lot of games and doing well in those games. It's even to make your first team debut, regardless of where you play, at 16, you've got to be very highly rated by the club setup and the management, and even more, most importantly, the youth scouts who found you, and then playing youth football under the academy coaches. So again, so much promise around Schwartau, so young, and he's got so much ability. Clearly, could be that Norwich have unearthed a real gem here. They found a diamond in the rough. But again, it's all down to if this signing does come through and if he plays a lot of first team minutes. This could be a signing where Norwich actually integrate him into the academy side, and maybe they look at how he performs there against, you could argue, weaker opposition. Bit less physical than in the Championship. There are a lot of big, burly centre halves. Norwich have got a few themselves. Again, but as I keep saying, I'm going to sound like a broken record. We will have to wait and see if the deal comes off and what happens in terms of what Torup wants to do with him, and with him having played at Brondby against Torup's old team Norgeland, and even Glenn Riddleton, who is Torup's assistant, who has managed out in Denmark. It will be a player they know a lot about on. They'll have a lot of information on. So clearly they know of his abilities. They know how highly rated he is. And I reckon that with their relationship, of course, all being Danish as well always helps. So that could really help out Schwartau if he is to join. But on to the actual deal itself. It's been reported by the Pinken and journalists out in Denmark that this deal is worth €2.5 million, so a lot cheaper than a bit of the business Norwich City have been doing as of late. Brondby will also have a 15% sell-on clause, and it will be a 4-year contract, which brilliant, tying a player down to the long term and getting him on quite a cheap amount of money, considering how highly rated and quite a bit of rave there is about Schwartau out in Denmark. So €2.5 million for a player who's in the last year of his contract as well, where of course maybe transfer value can dip a little bit, but still, if you've got a player who you very highly rate and was probably not far off signing a new deal with Brondby, Norwich would have had to have paid probably a bit more than what was expected to be paid. But €2.5 million, impressive business, has to be said, from Ben Napper to find a player of clear ability who could well be good enough, and getting them on the cheap. Could it end up being a brilliant signing and we end up selling him for a lot of money? It could be, but with that 15% sell-on clause, basically, if Norwich sell Schwartau for £10 million, then Brondby will get £1.5 million from it. So pretty much just simple maths. But we'll wait and see. Again, as I keep saying, I'll sound like a broken record. It's all about patience here, and this is what has mainly surrounded the Yahannisov Torup era so far. Norwich have had to, all the fans have just got to be patient and back the process and believe in the project. And Torup wants players who will believe in the project. That was, as I said in the Cernach video, one of the very first things he said in the pre-season camp about it being a we game, not an I game. This is why players like Jonathan Rowe, who's now off to Marseille, Abu Kamara, who's handed in a transfer request, these are players who clearly don't agree with the project. And if you don't agree, you are not going to play. That is simply how it is under Torup. Do I like that? Yes, I personally do. It's big to manage all these egos, of course, with so many different players, and you want them to all be on the same page and believe, because otherwise, if you have a clash of heads, management and players, then you can easily lose the dressing room, and the project ends up being a lot of money wasted, and then you have to hope someone else comes in, integrates a squad that isn't their players, and it works. But anyway, enough about that. We'll go on to our final talking point, the goals and assists of Schwartau. Now, he's got 6 goals in 46 first team games since he made his debut for Brondby in 2022. Arguably not impressive, but again, he's an attacking midfielder who hasn't had that many starts this season already. I believe it's either 4 or 5 appearances he's made, and he's only started once. So again, a player who isn't getting a lot of first team minutes in terms of starts and playing full games. There's, of course, being a young player, it's going to be difficult to really get yourself in the first team straight away. Of course, you have got to perform at such a high level. You have to outperform your teammates who have probably had playing careers maybe half of his lifetime. So it's going to be very difficult to shake off experience and very talented players I'm sure Brondby already have in his position. But to play nearly 50 first team games at 18 years old, that's very impressive. Again, to be in the conversation of being in a first team at such a young age and getting minutes. Again, as I sort of mentioned earlier, could it be that Schwartau is brought into the academy sides first, and then he's utilised there maybe, and then he goes on to be a player who mainly features off the bench. Maybe if Norwich are chasing a game, they try a roll of the dice, bring on an unpredictable young player who wants to make a name for himself, or with 10-15 minutes to go, Norwich are cruising a game, they bring on a youngster, get him some first team experience, get his minutes in, see how he performs, and then you develop the player from there. Again, who knows? He's not even joined the club yet, but again, we're just waiting for the medical to go well for Schwartau. We're waiting for international clearance, and a big thing of that is that Norwich City, on the day I'm recording this, being Thursday, today released or came to a mutual agreement to end the contract of Guilherme Montoya, the young Portuguese left back. And a big thing about that is an ESC slot. Now, the actual terminology that stands for each of those letters has escaped me, unfortunately, but what that is I believe each team in the championship has 5, and it's how you can register a player without having to apply for a work permit after Brexit. So if Norwich have got enough slots there, they can just sign first team players, and if a work permit application is rejected, they can allocate that slot for the player, and they can be registered into the first team and into matchday squads and everything along those lines. I would imagine that after signing Cernach and Forson, we have had to get more spots for that, probably for Cordoba as well, although he's not coming from a European country or be a European team in Bulgaria, but of course being from Panama. But it seems as if Norwich probably had all those slots filled up, and after signing Cernach, probably most likely used their last one, and now they had to deallocate one through getting rid of Montoya, and then now they're going to use it on Schwartau in order to have him properly registered, and he can be a player at Norwich City. Of course, all the best to Montoya. Showed brilliant signs in pre-season. I'm sure there'll be a club more than willing to take him on, and he could end up being a very good player, but that's not what we're here to talk about. We were here to talk about Oscar Schwartau, and I hope you've enjoyed this video and you now know a little bit more about who could be the next man wearing the yellow and green shirt. Hopefully we see it announced soon and the deal all goes well, but again, as I keep saying, we'll have to wait and see. I have been Freddie Humphrey Wakefield, and thank you for watching this video here on the MyFootballWriter YouTube channel. I hope you have enjoyed it. Please make sure you like this video and subscribe to the channel. We're getting very close to 2,000 subscribers, and hopefully we can achieve that soon. I believe we're only about 70 off now, so let's make that final push, people. Anyway, as I say, I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I'll see you here on the MyFootballWriter YouTube channel, for the next video of ours. It's goodbye for now, and I will see you then.